Welcome back to The Explainer. Have you ever felt completely, utterly stuck on a problem, only to realize way later that you were just trapped by your own limited way of seeing the world? Honestly, it happens to all of us. We kind of suffocate in these tiny, rigid little boxes of our own making, immobilized by our deeply ingrained beliefs. But what if you could assemble a council of the greatest minds in history to help you literally break out of that box, to give you brilliant advice and help you make excellent decisions? Well, today we are going to learn exactly how to construct and actually use your very own mental boardroom.
To really get why a mental boardroom is absolutely crucial, we first have to look at this fantastic quote from MMA fighter Melissa Croden. She states, "No problem can be solved by the same consciousness that created it." You see, as humans, our biological and psychological needs are constantly being filtered through these thick layers of unconscious beliefs and attitudes. And this worldview, it acts like a rigid box. When we're stuck inside of it, the only solutions we can actually see are the ones already in the box with us. So, new knowledge, true wisdom, and really innovative solutions, they simply have to come from outside our current belief system.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where it gets really exciting. If we know for a fact that our current perspective is exactly the thing holding us back, how do we actually step outside of it? How do we find that objective, higher-level thinking when we are just completely stuck in our own heads? To answer that, we're going to treat this explainer like a literal step-by-step meeting agenda for your mind. First, we'll examine the trap of your worldview. Second, the invisible counselor's technique. Third, frameworks for good decisions. Fourth, navigating your inner voices. And finally, taking action every day. Let's get to it. All right, let's call this mental meeting to order and start right at the top with item 1, the trap of your worldview, escaping the box. Because, we really need to understand exactly why we make bad choices before we can even try to fix them. I absolutely love this definition. It says your worldview really is the set of hinges on which all your everyday thinking and doing turns. Think about it like a model of your universe, largely built from stuff you completely unconsciously absorbed from your caretakers, your peers, and the media back when you were a kid. These hidden beliefs dictate your priorities and your boundaries. And when they're left unexamined, well, these hinges get rusty. They cause us to repeat the exact same unconscious mistakes over and over, plunging us right into inner conflict.
So, how do we oil those rusty hinges? How do we break free? Well, that brings us to the definitive solution. And item 2 on our agenda, the invisible counselor's technique, summoning your advisors.
Enter the invisible counselor's technique. Now, this was introduced way back in 1938 by Napoleon Hill, and it's basically a method of using your imagination to consult with personalities that you consider to be incredibly wise. Imagine being able to draw upon the experiences of the most brilliant people you can think of. Maybe it's Abraham Lincoln, or Socrates, a wise former teacher, or, hey, even a fictional character. This technique is wildly effective because it uses symbols and imagination to completely bypass your personal biases and your blind spots. It essentially lets you relate to a level of wisdom that's usually way beyond your daily comprehension.
So here's exactly how you do it. Step 1. Pick your role models. Choose people you deeply, deeply admire. Step 2. Close your eyes, relax, and visualize the meeting room. It could be a super sleek, modern conference room, or literally just your own living room. Try to see the details vividly, how they look, the sound of their voices, even the furniture. Step 3. Bring up your problem. So the crucial point is, you must ask for specific advice. Tell them exactly how they can help you. Listen attentively as they present a plan, and don't be afraid to ask them for clarification. With a little persistent practice, these invisible counselors will start providing you with some seriously surprising insight and inspiration.
Okay, so now that your council of brilliant advisors is seated at the table, giving you all these varied perspectives, you need a solid way to process their advice and reach a final verdict. Let's move to item 3, frameworks for good decisions, evaluating the evidence.
When you're making a decision based on the advice you've just gathered, you've got to make sure you aren't missing any crucial data. You can actually evaluate your options through these 4 lenses. First up, facts. What is the actual real-world data and evidence? No guesses allowed here. Second, logic. What makes logical sense based on cause and effect? Third, emotion. How do you feel? Now, feelings aren't facts, but they are vital data points that highlight unspoken concerns. And fourth, outside. What is the neutral, wise perspective? Which, by the way, is the exact perspective your invisible counselors just handed to you.
Once you've got all your data, you need to weigh your alternatives. And this brilliantly illustrates how to do that. The 6 thinking hats method. You basically look at a single option from 6 completely different angles. The white hat looks purely at the facts. The red hat explores your feelings. The black hat? That one plays devil's advocate, looking for risks and what could potentially go wrong. The yellow hat is looking for the optimistic benefits. The green hat seeks out creative alternatives. And finally, the blue hat manages the overall thinking process. This method is amazing because it completely prevents groupthink, even within your own mind.
Now let's be real, it's not always a completely smooth meeting in there. The human mind is quite literally divided. That's just a neurological fact. Internal conflicts are completely natural, which perfectly brings us to item 4, navigating your inner voices, managing the boardroom.
Let's pull in a little transactional analysis here to see how this builds on our boardroom concept. Basically, different ego states are constantly fighting for control of the microphone in our heads. For instance, you've got the parent ego state, which mirrors all the rules, judgments, and criticisms we learned completely unconsciously in childhood. It can be super bossy, rigid, and demanding. We really want to contrast that with the adult ego state. This state operates rationally in the present moment, looking at the facts without all that heavy emotional baggage from the past. When you're making decisions, you have to recognize if your highly critical parent voice is just shouting down your rational adult voice.
So instead of letting these inner voices just duke it out, we need a mindset shift. Often, we operate from an independent perspective, right? We ask, how can I assert my autonomy? But a synergistic perspective asks a much better question. How can we make this a win-win situation? Look, synergy doesn't replace your independence, it enhances it. By combining your different internal strengths, your skills, and even the varying viewpoints of those invisible counselors, you just get way more done. You're aligning your internal team rather than dividing it.
But what happens when a totally disruptive inner voice, like, say, that impulsive short-term gratification trickster, hijacks the meeting? Well, you manage them using these 4 steps. Step 1, ground yourself with some deep breaths. Step 2, ask your mind, hey, what part of me is feeling anxious or resistant right now? Step 3, actually visualize that part as a separate being sitting right there in your boardroom. Give it a shape, give it a name. And step 4, dialogue with it, completely without judgment. Ask it what it needs and how it thinks it's protecting you. By listening to it objectively, you literally strip away its power to unconsciously control your actions.
All right, you've consulted your brilliant advisors, you've weighed the evidence, and you've successfully managed those inner conflicts. Now it's time for item 5, taking action every day, adjourning the meeting. This is the moment we bring our internal decisions out into reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it gives you a highly portable toolbox for the real world. It's called the radar method. When you leave that cozy mental boardroom and face the absolute chaos of daily life, you use this. First, reflect. Just pause and observe your situation without judgment. Second, describe. Articulate exactly what you are thinking and feeling in that specific moment. And third, respond. Take intentional, value-based action. Radar creates this incredibly powerful, deliberate space between what you feel and what you actually do, stopping those impulsive reactions dead in their tracks.
And when it really is time to respond, remember the words of one of the absolute greatest fictional invisible counselors of all time, Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try. Look, once you have made a decision in your mental boardroom, you must take immediate action, no matter how small that action is. Action builds momentum. It completely reduces doubt. It shifts your entire mindset from just thinking to doing. Delay? Delay only invites hesitation and endless second-guessing. You have to lock the counsel's decision into motion by acting immediately. Your worldview doesn't have to be a trap, you guys. By consciously, intentionally constructing your own mental boardroom, seeking the profound wisdom of invisible counselors, and applying structured frameworks to your thinking, you can absolutely master your internal world. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question. Who will you invite to your next mental meeting? I want you to think of the greatest minds you admire, pull up a chair for them, and start asking those big questions. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.